Welcome back, everyone. This is part two of Mixed Dentition. I'm Kelly Tyrrell, Education Executive and Lead Digital Treatment Planning Planner with Clearly Aligned. And I'm here with founder, Dr. Stephen Schulk. Hey, Stephen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Kelly?
Good, good. Well, we're back on Mixed Dentition here. We had
Yeah.
so much to say last time. We had to cut it up.
You guys are
Slice
stuck
and
with us
dice.
again. Exactly. But again, something that I think right now a lot of doctors listening might be like, mixed dentition. I don't do mixed dentition. You guys are crazy. Only orthos can
Yeah.
treat mixed dentition. And the answer to that is no. Mixed dentition cases are easy, fun, profitable. You have lots of time
Mhm.
to do them. In my opinion, I think that all general dentists, if you're treating kids, that you should be paying attention to their orthodontic situations and intervening either directly yourself or sending to an ortho. But 100% these are cases that you can be doing if you have a passion for it.
Exactly. And I think too, just to highlight like our orthodontists or whatever who we are referring to, the more that you're looking at your client base or new patients that are coming into your office, the more patients you're naturally going to be referring anyways to your orthodontist. It just happens. There are complex cases or cases you're not going to want to touch for various reasons. And so your local orthodontist is going to find an increase. I've found this myself in referrals when your GPs are educated. And in fact, a lot of very forward thinking orthodontists are actually running study clubs for their local GPs, hosting dinners, inviting them in and doing a portion of ortho and educating them because then you have your ortho goggles on and you're seeing more ortho cases in your own practice. You can keep some, but give some away. And, a lot of the times we're telling them which ones those are. But a lot of us, we all start in different levels of the pool. And again, it's all about education and commitment to that education and passion. So if you know what you're doing and you're doing it well, no harm done. And that's what we're here for,
I,
basically, to make sure that
Kelly,
you're doing it well.
you are
Yeah.
just so well spoken. That's just I
I don't
agree
think anyone has
100%.
ever said that.
No, that was a great statement because that's the thing for any orthos who might be listening here. I also don't want this to come across as competition because the
No.
reality is that when we started doing aligner orthodontics in our practice, the number of referrals we were sending out increased significantly.
Mhm.
Now the key is that understanding that patients want aligners
Mhm.
and the benefits of hygiene and then of course like comfort, efficiency of movement, digital setups, all of that. We have to be in a digital world. And so if all the orthos that are in your community aren't able to take on the cases that you're referring to them with aligners, then that's
Yeah.
where there kind of becomes a bit of an issue. So if you're in a center where you've got great aligner focused orthodontists, then you're in a really good position. And that's the thing. Those are the people who are going to be getting way more cases because you're going to be educating your patients about aligners and about the value of doing aligner orthodontics.
Yeah.
And then if it's a case that's outside of your scope, cool, like no problem. You don't have to treat everything. You send it to the orthos that are going to treat that. But it does force orthodontists who are more traditional in using fixed brackets and wires to start expanding their scope as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think it's a good conversation. I think it's a nice, chance to go golfing or go for a drink or, stop by for a chat with your local orthodontist and just to say, hey, explain to me what types of cases you're doing in aligners, not to be like aligner pushers because there's a lot of great ways to do ortho, but just so that we're on the same page. So if I refer a patient to you and I've set them up or they really want aligners, that's just what they want and I'm referring to you and they're expecting you're going to be like, yes, I'm a specialist and I can do this with aligners. And you say, no, this is not an aligner case, or this is going to be XYZ. We don't both look bad. That's the moral of this story. And the patient gets what they want. And so you get to know which orthodontist. And again, they don't have to be local, to be honest, because most of us who are doing this very well, our patients are very spread out. They're either digitally dentally monitored, or their appointments are so far apart just because that's the world we're living in that we do a great job in spacing it out to make it convenient for us and the patients that again they can go an hour away to the top rated Invisalign
Totally. And
orthodontist
they
to your
will
local.
too. Like
Yeah,
I
and
am
yeah.
known in our area for doing aligner orthodontics on kids. And I have patients who come from like 7, 8 hours away because
Yeah.
they're up in like the Northwest Territories or Nunavut, and they could choose to go to Edmonton or to Calgary or even fly to Vancouver. Like they have better, maybe even easier options, but they know, because one of the biggest practice differentiators that you have in the aligner world of things is treating mixed dentition cases.
Yeah.
Like parents, once they see the value of what you're providing and how much better it was for like the number of appointments being fewer, the comfort
Hmm.
being better, if you have things set up with virtual monitoring, with dental monitoring, then you're checking in frequently. You obviously need to make sure that you know how to actually do it, right? Like I'm not just saying that
Right.
you can't just be like, I listened to a podcast and I decided to start doing mixed dentition cases because Stephen and Kelly were like, you can do this. Like,
All
no, like,
6-year-olds with rotated 3 1s. Sign them
yeah,
up. Six
yeah,
thousand
like
dollars.
you need to like educate yourself, and like
Yeah.
the whole goal again is we're here to provide that education, those insights. And so if you take the courses, and anybody's ever unhappy taking the course, if you sign up and you're like, you know what, that was just not what I was expecting, I don't want to treat mixed dentition cases, could I get my money back? 100%. I'll give you the money back and we'll give you the CE. But in reality, my goal is you come to the course, you see it, you recognize it, you understand it. You're like, okay, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I can treat these cases and look at how much I'm changing and benefiting their lives. And then you're
Yeah.
going to find that patients will come to you from really great distances. And I've even had some doctors that I work with in the Toronto area who say same thing. They'll have patients who will drive an hour, 2 hours to come see that specific doctor because they
Right.
treated a family member or a friend, and they wouldn't for themselves as parents. But for their
Yes.
kids, they want someone who they know does a really, really great job treating mixed dentition cases. And so they will sacrifice and they will make that drive. But they also know that we can be very efficient with our appointments and see people every like 3 to 4 months or even less frequently with dental monitoring.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, like our whole vision and premise behind this whole company and our education is high quality, excellent outcomes. So we want a great patient experience. We want you to be profitable. We want you to enjoy, as a doctor, your balance, your work-life balance and all that type of stuff. So those are, things that are important to us as well. But the thing that's most important is that at the end of the day, the orthodontics that you're providing is to the standard of an orthodontist. So had they have gone down the street to the orthodontist, and that orthodontist also did aligners and blah, 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 blah. So it's apples to apples. They would have walked out with that same stunning smile. Otherwise, I can tell you right now, I would not be here because I'm
Oh
pretty
yeah.
picky.
Kelly is a very, very picky person who has very high standards. So her joining us at Clearly Aligned, yeah, I very
Yeah,
much
I would
appreciate
not
that.
let you, if anyone who has a case review with me, I don't dice my words. I try to be polite. I'm not sure if I always come across as polite on my recordings, but I just will tell you exactly what I think about the case setup or the attachment choice, or I'm just like, yeah, no, you're not done. You're like, keep on going here.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And
So yeah,
that's just it. Like it's all about quality first and foremost, because we're not here to be like, okay, you're going to do this case and you're going to do it half as well as the orthodontist and charge half as much. Like, no, that's
no, no.
if you like, again, the goal is I don't want you to be terrified, because once you know what you're doing, it's so easy. It's
Yeah,
so easy because it's
yeah.
just essentially knowing how the puzzle works. And I know we talked about this after our last podcast, just making sure to mention this. So after part one is what you're really needing to learn is the specifics of the growth about how
Mhm.
this patient is going to change, because obviously where they're at 8 is not where they're going to be at 13, which is not
Right,
going to be where they're at 15. Once
right.
they're finished growing and they're finished puberty, then like no, they're kind of set. This is where they're positioned now. But it's just about learning that growth pattern. And once you kind of know that you're at a moving target, it's kind of like
Yes,
someone when they are throwing like a plate up in the air and you've got the skeet shooting gun and you're going to shoot it, right? You need to know that, okay, it's going up this direction. It's going to come back down in the same arc. And so I'm going to lead and I'm going to be shooting in front of where it's at, because that's where it's going to be at the
right,
end when my
right.
bullet is actually hitting it. But the actual biomechanics, like honestly, I know we've
Mhm.
talked about this before. Pretty much with mixed dentition cases, you could go ahead and throw on like any attachment. And as long as
Yeah,
you have them on enough teeth that they have retention of their trays, the bone is like butter and the teeth are
yeah,
going to track and everything's going to move. So
yeah.
the biomechanics and attachments for adults, in my opinion, can be very complicated and very hard.
Right,
And so you have to know the right staging, the right attachments, the right movements, the right, like everything. With mixed dentition cases, it's kind of just like everything works. And then you just need to know
Yeah.
where they're
Yeah.
going to grow to and plan for that.
Yeah, so that's a good point because I mean, obviously one of my I would say my favorite lifetime course out of all of my orthodontists and dentists and all the courses that I've taken is biomechanics attachments. I've taken it a gazillion times. But if you haven't taken that, anyone who's listening to this and you decide, hey, I'm going to go to this mixed dentition course, I'm going to take it online or go in person. But I meant to take I better take the biomechanics first. In this case, you don't need to
No,
because you can trust I will say with a certain degree of you know what a certain degree of comfort or
confidence. Yeah.
something or confidence that even the optimized I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to attachments, but even the optimized attachments, but especially in the Invisalign First product, which again we're going to talk about the different products, but Invisalign First will automatically pre-populate you with really nice attachments that are size and shape appropriate and movement appropriate for that young person's smile, and they do a really good job. And again, the movements will probably express as they're supposed to without overthinking it, without like to bevel to not to bevel,
Totally. Yeah, it doesn't
all
matter.
these different things. So yeah, so I do like that about. I will say that's one of the benefits of the Invisalign First product. And if you don't know too much about it, you can trust that more than definitely with an adult, I would say.
I
Heck
think so.
no.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay. So let's talk just a little bit again, because these are different kids with the growth and the diagnosis and the treatment planning, like knowing what direction. Because what I don't want is for doctors to be looking into a young person's mouth eight and thinking, oh yeah, okay, I blocked out two, so let's start there. And oh, their molars are looking a little class two and starting to nudge them or distalizing them in one direction without the big picture, without knowing, hey, mom happens to be a class three. And then you've backed things up, even if it's only a millimeter or two. Again, almost everything is reversible in orthodontics, like very qualified
Agreed.
arts and crafts. But you don't want to go in the wrong direction.
No.
We want to always try to go in the direction of growth. Where it makes sense. So yeah, I just don't want people just shuffling teeth around based on what they see in the mouth. We do need to look at all the pictures and the x-rays and mom and dad and the history. Yeah.
Yeah. And let's actually just go ahead and what I'll do is I'm just going to give a quick 2-minute summary right now
Okay.
of growth and development. Just
Yeah.
high level so that you have an idea of what's happening, right? And I cover this a lot in mixed dentition, but also in diagnosis, development, and treatment planning, which is a standalone course. I don't really teach this one live as much because there's not as much demand. So it's available online, but also like a very, very good course for understanding growth and development and whatnot. But so high level overview is when you're looking at the arches, the maxillary and the mandibular arches, there's different ways that they could have grown to have either like the correct position and that they might be growing to, or that it might be incorrect. And it all makes sense because there's really 3 planes of space. So you could have someone who has an anterior posterior problem. And I want you to think about this phrase as I describe all of these because they'll describe where the patient is going to. Richard Litt always told me that the pattern is the pattern is the pattern. If you start to see the pattern when they're young, that pattern will continue. They're not going to all of a sudden change tremendously to no longer be growing that way. So let's say that you see a kid that shows up and they're class 3, right? Okay. Then you know that they're going to continue trying to grow more class 3. Their jaw is going to grow more in the anterior posterior direction. That's going to get worse. Let's say you see a kid and they come in and they have no jaw whatsoever. They're like complete class 2. Well, you know, again, the pattern is the pattern is the pattern, that they are going to have correction. Like we're going to have to work on correcting their class 2. Now, where this is relevant is not necessarily saying like you see the class 3s and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is clearly a class 3 case. This kid is needing a lot of elastics and they need to like get their anterior posterior corrected. But let's say that you see a kid who's 8 and they've got no overjet. Like they're perfect. If they were an adult, you'd be like, sweet, like this is done. Okay. But you look at their jaw on their side profile view and their Ceph, if you're taking a Ceph, and you look at them and you're like, wow, they have like a perfect facial balance for like an adult. but well, they're 8. So what
Yeah.
does that mean, right? They're going to be growing then more. Their jaw is going to continue to grow because the jaw is the last thing to stop growing. So then that even though they look kind of a little bit like class 1 and they're perfect right now, that they're going to have a class 3 tendency because
Right.
they ideally actually should be slightly class 2 at that age. So knowing that, like, you're evaluating to say, okay, that the pattern there, like that they're right now in class 1, but they're going to be moving more to class 3 because they shouldn't be class 1 just yet. Same thing with the vertical then. These are usually related more to tongue habits, that if they're not swallowing properly, and they have low tongue posture and they're mouth breather, then their back teeth, they're super erupting until they hit other teeth again. They get occlusion. And then the patient opens their mouth more. And then those back teeth super erupt again. And they go from being this like normal facial balance to all of a sudden their vertical dimension is getting longer and longer and longer. And they have an open bite tendency. Or let's say they have super strong muscles and they're clenching and grinding like crazy. Then you see that they have a very short lower facial third and very strong masseter muscles. Well, those two patients, unless you intervene, the pattern is the pattern is the pattern. The open bite patients are going to continue growing longer vertically. The deep bite patients are going to continue having short lower facial thirds. And so we then know that we can step in and intervene and change some of the growth, but we're always fighting against that pattern. So that's kind of the overview. And then the third area of change is the transverse, right? The width of the maxillary arch, where again, it's usually related to tongue posture because this is all coming back to the patient's musculature.
Right.
And if their tongue is not lifting properly to the palate, well, that's nature's palatal expander. So then they're going to have a narrow palate. And then that means that they're an open mouth breather. The back molars super erupt, like we just talked about the vertical problem. And so having a narrow palate and having a long facial height, like those two issues are related to one another.
Okay.
And so again, all of these things, you can kind of evaluate them and realize, okay, like this is how we jump in. This is how we break the pattern as much as we possibly can, or we try to fight against the pattern to make sure that when they're done, they're going to be biting in that proper class 1 occlusion, knowing that for girls, you have less time and for boys, you have a little bit more time. Whew, there's your...
Ooh, that was good.
The quick overview.
I was listening intently there. Just make sure. I remember when I first started, I was with the GP when I took the intro to, I don't even know what we call it now, like, welcome to Invisalign, you're a new doctor or whatever. And and way back then, maybe it was karma, maybe it was written in the stars, but he signed me up as a doctor because he knew I was going to be helping him or at least delivering it or whatever. So we took the course in 2006 or whatever it was. And I remember thinking, are we really doing this? Because again, we were GPs or whatever. And I remember going to bed at night thinking, I don't think we should do this. Like, I'm going to create like big horse smiles out of kids' faces. I was like totally getting in my own head. And to be honest, I'm not sure he ever even said we were treating kids or teens, but in my head, just ortho was for children in my head.
Right, yeah.
And so I was thinking, I'm not doing it. Of course, it only takes one stubborn hygienist, one staff member who is the roadblock. And that was it. We did not do one case ever. I was just like, no, we just didn't do it. Cause I was like, I don't think this is for us. And anyways, just, you got to get your team on board. You got to give them the confidence that you know what you're doing, or until you know what you're doing, you can use us to help you diagnose, treatment plan, help you set up the cases. We have these services. And then, you concentrate on the sales,
the learning part,
the delivery, the monitoring. That's easy. That's like training wheels.
Yeah, exactly. So what Kelly's talking about is we have a ClinCheck review service that we're there for, where you can range in services between getting a ClinCheck set up, having the ClinCheck set up with a video, or having us take on the whole case and then showing you how, like, we'll take on the prescription form, ClinCheck 1, 2, 3, 4, refinement 1, 2, 3, whatever. Like, we'll do all of the digital treatment planning and explain it to you too at the same time, so you can learn from that case. So you can check that out on the website. But yeah, I agree 100% that you definitely need to have your team on board. Just understanding kind of, it's almost like the 3 legs of the stool. You need to have the team on board. You need to understand how to present cases.
Yeah.
And then you need to know how to, well, I guess those ones kind of go hand in hand. Then you need to know clinical systems to make sure that you're actually efficient at what you're doing. And then the third
Mhm.
part is you need to have the treatment planning aspect where you're actually setting up your ClinChecks right and you're actually diagnosing properly.
And to that point, and I guess it's not mixed specific. It's just like a new project specific. Have confidence. So if you're going to do this, no matter who you're talking to, if it's your team, if it's your patients or whatever, have the confidence like, yes, I can. Yes, I can do it. Yes, Invisalign can do this for your type of case, and we'll figure out the details.
Yeah.
Like, we'll figure it out. But you have to have confidence because otherwise you're going to be in that new patient exam and you're going to talk yourself out of the case because you're going to be like, well, we could move it here. We could move it. We might need IPR.
Yeah.
We might need elastics. You don't know what you might need. Say less. Say less. Say less to the
Well,
team. Say, I'm part of an elite group called Clearly Aligned. I was chosen. I've taken elite courses. I got this. And you guys are going to start looking.
yeah.
So,
Well, and the other
less
thing
is
is
more.
through the courses, if you do take them, I give a case library, which has a whole bunch of cases that you can show them that were treated with clear aligners that could be similar to their child. And so you don't need to say that I didn't treat this. You can just say like, these are cases that are treated with clear aligners.
Yeah.
Because when I first started too, back in 2017 with aligners, I was doing mixed dentition cases before there was even Invisalign first around. And it's just
Yes.
because I had mentors and people I learned from, like Donna Galante, Regina
Mm-hmm.
Blevins, who and not necessarily that they even met me, but I just watched lectures and learned from them from courses they taught.
Right.
And that allowed me the confidence to say like, oh, if they're doing this, like I can do it. I just need to make sure
Yeah.
that I'm educated and I learn what I'm doing. So
Exactly. Hey, can I ask, because oftentimes, with young, like mixed dentition or phase one, we do expanders. Expanders are still widely used, and I won't say I love expanders. I can't wait till there's like, there are removable expanders. We know that, but still, I can't wait till there's a next generation and there's some kind of breakthrough, which I know you've been working on for years with Align. But anyways, is that a top secret?
yeah.
Kelly said it out loud. It doesn't matter. You can't see it. We're not showing anything. But sometimes you need expansion beyond what aligners can do, and aligners are amazing. But can you talk about what's your kind of pivot where is there some kind of magical line in the sand where
Yeah.
you're like expander first?
Not usually expander first unless there's something crazy going on.
Okay.
So for me, it goes this way. And this is again, like taught to me, this is kind of the protocol that I know a lot of orthos who are like advanced users with pediatrics would do, which is you start off with the liners and you see how much you can get,
Okay.
right? You see how much dental alveolar expansion you can get, and you work with them on tongue posture. So we have like a myofunctional therapist, someone who helps the patient understand if they have low tongue posture, how to swallow properly. She's a hygienist in our practice that took the courses. So you could go ahead and have one of your staff members also learn this too, or it's very likely in your community somebody's doing it. And
Okay.
so we worked with the patients then to work on their swallowing, elevating their tongue, getting in the right spot. And then if we need the expansion still, we get through their first round of aligners and they're having we haven't expanded as much as we need to, and their tongue habits haven't been corrected. Then we'll go ahead and use like a fix Hyrax, right? A
Okay.
key turned palatal expander, because then you go ahead and you just expand the arch, right? All the teeth are kind of like aligned and set up properly. So you'd go ahead and you'd expand the arch and you get the additional expansion with that. But it used to be that we'd start with the expanders, and then we kind of realized that if we correct the tongue habit, because the tongue is nature's palatal expander. So maybe you do a
Okay.
frenectomy and now the tongue can lift to the roof of the mouth and you do some tongue
Okay.
training exercises. Now those patients, they swallow and the tongue does what it was supposed to do,
Hmm.
and you don't need to do a Hyrax. But
Okay.
there are cases where, like I just had one where it was a child who's like 9, and you look at his maxilla and we took a CBCT and it's very underdeveloped.
Okay.
And he is having airway issues. He's not sleeping well. He has sleep apnea. And so what we did then is we actually did a TAD-based expander. So we actually placed
Okay.
2 temporary anchorage devices into the roof of his mouth, into his kind of anterior palate, and we hook on essentially a TAD-supported Hyrax, and it also attached to his first molars. And then you turn the key, and you can see that like we completely developed his maxilla comparing CBCTs. That his maxilla is now like very, very developed. It's exactly as wide as it was supposed to be. And the reason why we did it that way is that we wanted to really jump in there for airway concerns like right away. And we didn't want to wait on it. And he had a lot of crowding. So sorry, one last thing. We were running the risk of expanding that his teeth would flare out a lot. So by expanding, we got a big diastema because his lateral incisors were like almost completely behind his central incisors. So once we expanded, then we just aligned all the teeth in the arch, and I didn't have to worry about like proclining and flaring all the teeth. Instead, we used that space to move the teeth.
I see.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. I gotcha. Sorry. I didn't know where the flaring was coming from. And why did you choose to do the TAD based expander versus like banded?
Yeah, we know that if you do banded expanders that you're getting about, and don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure this is the statistics that's a hard word. Statistics. That it's about 70% dental alveolar expansion occurring still with a Hyrax, and 30%
even for a child.
I could be getting this backwards. I really should know this, but it's either numbers. 30% is dental alveolar or 30% is skeletal. Please write in the show notes and correct me on my terrible lack of, for anybody listening, on my terrible lack of statistics. But there's a portion, which is at least 30%, is dental alveolar expansion occurring.
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure in this particular case that we got 100% skeletal expansion. Because of how severely constricted his arch was.
Okay.
And because we, at this point, weren't working on any tongue exercises and we didn't do a frenectomy or anything, I knew that we weren't really getting true skeletal expansion by just using the aligners. So,
right.
But you would not have been wrong as well to go in and use a Hyrax and do the expansion that way. You would have got some dental alveolar, you would have got some skeletal expansion, but you would have had a mix of the two. But in this particular case,
like because we do get, obviously we get the sutures, like we would see the same would see the same diastema. But I do like obviously, there's pros and cons. I do like not having a band around the tooth, because if you do try to have some aligners on the outside for anterior teeth, obviously we're not closing the diastema as we're opening it. So,
no.
But at a certain point when you're holding steady, so you've got the expansion you want and you're holding steady, you could go in with aligners then and start tweaking while it's holding.
And that's actually what we did. And just to clarify this particular, so I've used multiple different types on kids. I've had ones that are just TAD based with no tooth support whatsoever. This one, just for support, actually still connected with bands. It was 3D printed. It connected with bands to the 6s.
Okay. Like all the way around, or like just on that lingual surface? There's so many fancy ones out there.
Yeah, this one here, because the bands are 3D printed to fit around the teeth. This was made by Tadman, is the company. Tadman. Yeah, they're out of Germany.
Brought to you by Tadman.
Brought to you by Tadman. This podcast, they paid us $0.
Tadman, send Kelly some money.
Yeah, exactly. Kelly needs a new car. No, Kelly just got a new car. But no, so Tadman, so they 3D print the bands, so you don't need to put separators between the teeth to fit the bands. You literally just go ahead, fill it with ortho cement, pumice the teeth, whatever, pop that up there, it cements. It's using the TADs as its main form of support, but it's just bracing against the first molars. Okay. And so I've used the ones without any arms on them, just TADs to TAD, like just that expansion, where sometimes like we'd have a second primary molar.
Right.
The first molar was stuck underneath that. And so we pulled the first primary molar, but we didn't want to have to wait till that tooth erupted. So we didn't really have anything great for bonding to. So we just did like a straight up TAD based.
Okay.
So that's one option. Or you go ahead and put it, like you said, we have it also attached to the first molars, whether that's the full tooth with a band around it, or whether you have that just gluing to the lingual surface. Again, it's just kind of to support the appliance. And then the third option, which is you don't do TADs, you just go ahead and straight up do a
just like a banded, like
straight up, traditional Hyrax, no TADs. Yeah, exactly. Or then you could have removable RPs. Like there's so many different options for this. I think it all works. It's just we obviously try different protocols and try to see what is going to be most effective in our hands.
Yeah, I've done probably the most with orthos, like banded, traditional RPEs with arms. Some orthos bond, like we bond to the
To the
lingual of
primaries, yeah.
the primaries, and then we have an occlusal rest. And
Oh
Lord
yeah.
help my poor clients in their first 2 years that I was an ortho hygienist. Oh my God, I use so much glue. Everything is overkill. So taking this off,
Oh.
it's fine if I'm doing it for myself, but when my friends were taking it off, they were like, who the heck put all
Who
this
put
on?
like they use like $1,000 of glue?
Yeah, it was not coming off. And then also, I mean, back in the day when I was working in GP, I did take Dr. Rondeau, who's one of our followers now as well, his course, and he did a lot of removable expanders, which then I was driving my orthos nuts because I was like, don't we do removable ones? Because it just seems more patient friendly. But you also sometimes co-op
Compliant.
is not patient
Yeah,
friendly
exactly.
because if you can take it out and it's gaggy and those first few weeks it's difficult. But anyways, lots of different things. So yeah, I just wanted to ask. We definitely have had situations where um, in ortho specialty, we were meant to bond. We wanted to bond an RPE early, but we couldn't. Patient couldn't tolerate, like meaning
Yeah.
next level couldn't tolerate it, or they just didn't have the crown height. There was no way a band could get around these teeth. And so we did it with just Invisalign first and amazing results. So I will say we were all happily surprised, even though the crown height wasn't there for a band, magically we still got this expansion, like gingival overgrowth. It was like a genetic thing. And so crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing what you can get. So,
Well,
okay.
yeah, and the last thing on this, and then we'll move on, is yeah, essentially with the aligners, once you've gone ahead and uprated, like let's say they're lingually inclined, those molars, and then you go
Yeah.
ahead and you start creating some dental alveolar expansion, the roof of the mouth will change. You'll have more space because
Yeah.
sometimes the palate is so like it's so hard to get the expander up into the height of the
Yeah.
palate.
That
So
narrow little palate.
exactly. You go ahead and you first do dental alveolar expansion and set up the case. You're just setting up a really, really, really easy expander case. Whereas to start with,
Yeah.
like it's a very challenging to get the appliance fabricated and high enough to the palate. So
Yeah.
either way, like no matter what, it's going to be easier if you start with the aligners, in my opinion.
Yeah. Because otherwise it's like floating there. It's like a little
It's just
bridge, like
hanging
a tree
down.
house. And
Yep.
then they get food stuck in there.
Oh,
My
it's
son had one,
gross.
obviously, and I took him to Swiss Chalet as a treat that day. Right after with the softy bun, he was
Oh,
crying. It was stuck up in there. I did not anticipate that. I wasn't an ortho hygienist at that moment.
yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, what is
Yeah.
that? This is
Oh, it's
horrible.
gross. I had an
Now,
expander too.
yeah.
I pulled my expander out as a kid. I didn't realize nobody ever told me don't pick at it or anything, and it was so annoying and
Oh,
frustrating. I was like 9,
oh.
10, I don't know.
Kelly didn't glue
Um,
yours in.
I picked all the glue off the bands, and then I'd
Oh,
actually grab
geez.
the bands and I'd pull my appliance out, and I
Oh.
kept doing it. I did it 7 times, and then they just didn't do an expander, and instead just did dentialveolar expansion with brackets and wires. So
See?
just because of
You might have
comfort.
advanced our field there a little bit, Stephen. You were like, no, not for me.
Yeah.
Something else.
Yeah.
Try something else.
Which is also why I tell all kids if we do an expander is do not pick at it and tell their
Yeah.
parents to watch because like I totally pulled it off all those times and nobody ever said to me, Steven, are you picking at this? Did you
Oh,
pull it off?
yeah.
Instead it was
I
like,
never
oh,
even
the glue didn't work. It didn't hold up. In reality, I was just, yeah, terrible. And nobody asked me. If somebody had asked me, I would have just said like, oh yeah, I've been picking at it. Nobody
That's
asked.
crazy.
Yeah.
No,
Anyways.
I've never asked that question ever. So that will lead us to, so yeah, that was a whole little mini micro learn on expansion. Kelly got off on a tangent there, but I was learning myself. So let's go into the product. So there's Invisalign First, which was specifically designed, and I mean, I think the R&D, and I know the first webinar or webinar that was given on it was with Tarek Alviali because I listened to it and it was amazing. And I'm not sure if that's the first time I'd ever heard him speak. I don't know, but that was like a light bulb thing where it was hours and I loved it. And I just decided my child will have this next month. I hadn't even looked at her mouth, but I was like, she will have it. It came out that month and she did have it soon after. Anyways, that's probably still in the library. I mean, I think probably still all of the information holds true. I'm pretty good. I have a pretty good memory for these things. But so you can choose the Invisalign First product that's made for these growing smiles, and the AI is different. It is a different product. It's been developed for little tiny teeth, and the attachments are different, and just the setup of the arches altogether are different. Or you can choose one of the teen or adult products, but then you have to be very careful and engineer it. And there's definitely ways to do that. I know how we do it. Well, we still use Invisalign first. So why don't we talk about when and why we would use the Invisalign first product, and then maybe some of the limitations or why then we got creative and started
Sure.
to use the comprehensive.
Yeah, good question. So Invisalign first. So let's just clarify. There's one thing though, which is the actual aligners themselves are the same. The material
Yes.
doesn't change between the two. The setup and, like Kelly said, kind of like the protocols and the way the software works, that all changes. So with Invisalign first cases, the difference is that the attachments are made to be smaller with their optimized attachments. So those
Right.
attachments are smaller, and some of them function slightly differently to help with things like expansion and make sure the aligners stay on the teeth.
Hmm.
In terms of eruption compensation, you'll hear us talking about that term. So eruption compensation is a spot in the tray that catches the erupting teeth. You may have heard the term pontic before. And the difference between a pontic and eruption compensation is that a pontic is exactly the same size as the missing tooth.
Right.
Traditionally used more in an adult case, let's say you're missing your central incisor, you'd have a pontic that you can fill with composite or crown and bridge material or wax or whatever, or paint it, and that perfectly replicates the missing tooth. You don't want to use a pontic with a growing patient unless you change the size of it to not be what the expected erupting tooth would look like. Because if it's
Right.
exactly the same size, then that tooth can't fit inside it. So the
Right.
eruption compensation is larger than the erupting tooth, slightly.
Right.
So you can use eruption compensation everywhere in the mouth except on the lateral incisors and central incisors. You can only use them with Invisalign first. So the key differences for me of why I would use Invisalign first would be if a patient does not have lateral or central incisors that are currently like they're not erupted, and we need to go ahead and do treatment to help make space for those teeth to come in or they'll get impacted.
Okay.
Other than that, I generally use the Invisalign teen product, even if it's like an 8 or 9-year-old, and get the 5 years of comprehensive trays. The rationale is that I'm going to be having them in treatment for 5 years. And if their laterals and their centrals are in, that's the main feature that
Right.
I would be getting Invisalign first for. So if it's not for that, because the staging of how we expand the teeth, we can go ahead and write instructions to the technician for them to custom set up that staging pattern to either
Mhm.
move the first molars first and then expand and move all of the primary teeth. If you wanted to do it kind of that they expand first the molars, then the primary teeth. Or if you want to just do complete expansion and you want to make sure you have enough buccal root torque, you can again just write in your special instructions some specific phrases for them to create the Invisalign teen case staging wise to be the same as what the Invisalign first case would be. So,
Right. So yeah, so two for those of you who've never heard of any of this before. So like there's two basic setups if you're expanding. So you can push the big guys out first, just the like
the
1, 6, 2,
molars.
6.
Yeah.
Push the two big guys out, and then the rest of the team follows. And in the second stage, like the second chapter, the rest of them follow. Or you can say the whole team goes together. All of you, like the sixes and all the whatever else you have going on in there, you can all go together and it's predictable and blah blah blah. So you just choose which one do you want. It's a preference, or we all choose for different reasons. And yeah, the attachments obviously are perfectly sized and shaped, and you can't just selectively take any on and off. They're kind of like a group set. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You can add. You can add. You
You can
can change.
add you can. It's not like the extraction cases where if you take one off, it takes all of them off.
Takes all five off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
though there's certain ones that they group the attachments. These ones you could like theoretically take one off and then change it for a conventional, but generally speaking, they are designed to all work
Like they
together.
work together. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
if you
exactly.
take I see this a lot. I mean, even in adult cases where they're just like, no, I don't want to bond anything to the sevens because that seems hard. And then you're just randomly taking off attachments that you just can't be bothered to bond because it's near the
It's
cheek.
clinically hard.
And
Yeah.
yeah, you have to like think about it, but we won't talk about that. That's getting into the weeds there. So okay, so molars expand or all together. So that's definitely a reason that some people will use Invisalign first, or these eruption compensation. And again, the eruption compensation, um, it's strategically measured and predictable. Like as your canine is extruding into the mouth, it's predicting the rate of speed, the natural rate of speed that normal people's teeth erupt into the mouth. So it is working with you. It's very smart technology. So I do like that. Not that we don't have that in adults either. I mean, as premolars erupt, they
Yeah,
kind
it's
of got
just you
under
physically,
control.
like if you ask them for eruption compensation on the laterals or centrals, they'll just straight up reply and
Right.
be like, this is not available on this product.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yes,
And
but
you typically, Invisalign first, they want you to have the centrals. They want you to have the permanent centrals. If you
yeah,
can
what
get
is
away
it?
with it, but the centrals, the laterals, and the first molars, but the laterals
Not
can be
all
half
though.
erupted,
Yeah,
half erupted.
you need to have, oh, this is getting into the weeds, but you need to have eruption, at least traditionally, and I haven't tried this recently. You need to have eruption, I want to say, of two of the permanent teeth per arch. So you
Yeah.
have to have at least like one central in, like
It's usually a
whatever it is.
central and a first
Yeah,
molar
you
and
don't
a
need to have like all the laterals or all the centrals. Like I
no.
think you need to have like two to three permanent teeth, like either the upper first molars or like centrals or laterals. You need to have at least like three teeth in per arch or something like that in order to
Which
be
makes
given permission
sense
to use
because
Invisalign first.
yeah, the aligners would just be flapping in the wind if you didn't if you didn't have enough tooth structure. You need something in the front, you need something in the
Yeah,
back.
and just this
Yeah.
eruption of the central incisors, especially the upper, when they start coming in, you need to have enough space in the tray for those teeth to come in, and it's going to be challenging to like there's nothing to grip onto. So if they're losing their centrals and their laterals, like for me, it would just be a rule of thumb that I would say it would be very unlikely that I'd be starting a case without central incisors erupted in the
Yeah.
mouth because of the aligners retention. Like they won't really stay on the teeth, and the patients are just really young. Like treating a kid at
Yeah.
5, 6 is
Yeah.
quite early. And
Okay.
I actually realized on the last podcast I was referring to mixed dentition and saying like, oh, there's different stages of mixed dentition. And then I made a very silly comment and I said, there's early mixed dentition, which would be like under 5, and I really should have referred to that as primary dentition. I don't know why I was saying that was mixed
Claire might be a
dentition.
fast grower. She might have her
Yeah,
sixes and
it
when
would be
she's
very
4, you don't
uncommon.
know.
So yeah, exactly. So
Baby,
in
yeah,
reality, you're kind of waiting
baby
for those teeth.
Invisalign.
Yeah, exactly.
Baby Invisalign coming your way.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
not promoting
totally.
that. Yeah.
So
Sometimes you have to be, there's one thing to work with nature and growth, and there's another thing to just get in there too early and
yeah,
just
you
ruin
want to be
people's,
efficient.
yeah, you can't, it can't, yeah. Yeah. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, but lots
There
of
are
different protocols.
yeah,
Yeah,
there's
totally.
lots of isolated circumstances where that would be appropriate, but that would not be the norm.
Yeah. So
3 to 5 year olds.
I think is really cool and interesting then is like we don't do a ton of Invisalign first actually. Let
Yeah,
me
no, neither do
clarify.
we anymore.
Yeah, let me
Yeah.
clarify for anybody listening too. The negatives then of Invisalign first is that you only have 18 months of trace. So let's say you have a non-compliant patient and something doesn't go well. Or maybe the trays, like a couple teeth fell out and they lost a lot of teeth and now they're bouncing. And you're like, oh man, they lost their canines, first premolar or first molars, baby molars, and second molars on both arches. And you're like, literally, we have no teeth and the centrals and laterals are partway erupted. And now you're like, oh, crap. Well, then sometimes the best move is just to wait, give it a year,
Yeah.
come back and keep treating. But if you're doing Invisalign first, my grievance with it is that you're kind of stuck now that you're like, well, we gave it a year because we were at the 6-month mark and everything was falling out and we just couldn't get retention. Now it's a year later and you've used up all 18 months of the aligners. And now
Yeah. And you're rushing.
if
Yeah.
you start the second phase, which you're not actually at really the full phase 2 yet, then I think you get 2 years.
Yeah.
So
It's like 18 months from, I think it's
I think
is it
it's
18 months, 2 years?
it's 18 months for the first phase, and that's one cost. And then you have
Yeah.
up to 10 years to reopen the case for another price and start phase
Right.
2. And the total
Right.
price is more than if you just did a teen comprehensive by a decent amount. And
Yeah.
then you get 2 years, I believe, from the time, it's either 2 or 3, from the time that you reopen the case to finish the case.
Yeah.
And so
It's
in the
low.
end,
It's either 18 or 2.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's 2. And so you only end up with then like 30, like you end up with 3.5 years in order to treat the case. Whereas if you do a 5-year comprehensive on the teen, like a 5-year teen comprehensive, then you've got 5 years. So my preference then is do the teen case if they're over the age of 8, because my goal is that like, let's say they're 8.5, right? That means you've got till 13.5 to be done. In worst case scenario, you order them a new set of trays right before they're hitting the 5-year mark. So you could have another 6 months or years worth of trays at 13 and a half.
Yeah.
And so you can get like 5.5 years of trays
With
then
one lab feed, which
with
is
one
kind
lab
of
feed.
this whole conversation. Yeah,
Yeah,
one lab
exactly.
feed.
It's very efficient. And then here's kind of the hack or the workaround is there is a way that I will get eruption compensation essentially on the lateral incisors or central incisors if I need it. And what I do is we talked about before how you don't want to use a pontic in a growing patient unless you change the size and the shape of the pontic. So I
Right.
teach this in the course. I show you how you can request a pontic from the technicians. And this pontic is actually larger in width, mesial distally, as well as buccolingually.
Yeah.
And it's slightly shorter because the pontics are long, like they're the same size as the teeth, but the eruption compensations are shorter in the incisal gingival direction. So I create a pontic that is going to function like an eruption compensation tray would, so that the tooth can erupt into that pontic without hitting it. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of one of the workarounds that that I show doctors throughout the course, because you have the ability and control to change the size and shape as pontics as you see fit as the doctor. It's just that you have to get the technicians to actually go ahead and make those changes. You cannot do it yourself. So that's
Exactly.
what helps determine whether I choose Invisalign first or whether I choose Invisalign Teen. And again, we don't have time to go into all the protocols here, but through text instructions to my technicians, I can create a staging pattern that's similar to the Invisalign First product
Yeah.
without being
Yeah.
Invisalign First.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. Invisalign first, the only time I tend to use that is if we know for whatever reason, sometimes there's a reason it's going to be phase one only. So obviously it's a less
Yes.
expensive product.
Yes.
It's we are only doing phase one. Maybe they're only in town, like they're only
Yes.
in
They're
this
moving
country
in it.
for
They're moving in
blah,
two
blah, blah, blah.
years. Yeah.
Yeah. So we get in and out and done deal. And that's no big deal. And I think my biggest worry with Invisalign First when I first started it was that timing. What is my system to make sure I obviously we have growth and development in ortho. We have them back every 6 or 9 months. We have systems that we call them back, but now all of a sudden we have a product attached to that. So it's almost like we're calling them back or starting them earlier than maybe we even need to or want to, because Invisalign is telling us your 18 months or 2 years is up. For some reason, 18 months stuck in my head, but maybe it was 2 years. But I was always worried that I would miss that window and cost my orthodontist. Not that this was my problem, and not that that was my job, but I take everything so seriously. But I didn't want to cost my orthodontist a whole nother lab fee if I could have saved it, if I could have gotten in that window where now all of a sudden that phase two package would have been cheaper. I don't remember how much cheaper it is, 500, 800, whatever it is. It mattered to me. And it's a lot. We do a lot of children. We do a lot of mixed and early phase one cases. So I could just see that, I could potentially save a lot of money or lose a lot of money. And so
If
we
you get
did
your
the
timing
same
wrong,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, you start to get creative and use the packages that you're used to using, because you start to memorize the staging and the patterns that Dr. Albiali was talking about. And you're like, yeah, hey, I could do that. Now it's interesting. I never ordered teen. And now for tracking purposes and for Invisalign, I guess it would be nice to have them labeled as teen so they knew how much of the teen market or child market there is. But I never the teen to me, it was like the eruption, the posterior tabs
Yeah.
for like the erupting sevens usually.
Mm-hmm.
I never use those because I find them irritating. So I never choose those, never, 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 unless they have an open bite.
Which you can, I'm pretty sure you can use those with adult full comprehensives as well. Those are not exclusive.
But like Invisalign teen is $60 more, or back in the day when I
not
cared.
anymore. I think it's the same price. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then it doesn't matter. It was all about the $60 for me. I was like, I don't need the tabs and I don't need the blue dots. The blue dots hardly wear off.
And the blue dots, they charge you. You select them per case.
Yeah. Okay. So don't choose the blue dots.
Just
so
a clarification.
1 week cycle,
the blue dots are the compliance indicators. You can choose to purchase these on your trays. They're like whatever about extra, right? When you go to checkout after you've like accepted your ClinCheck and you go to the like billing and payment page on Invisalign, then it will go ahead and say like, hey, here's your like option to click compliance indicators. Those are blue like little tabs that are on the teeth, and they're on the back molars. They essentially break down from saliva over time. But, and maybe this is a nice segue into our next thing, they only start breaking down if you've been wearing the trays for like 2 weeks of full-time wear.
Yeah.
So, Kelly, how many
Mhm.
patients do you have that are teen patients wearing their trays for 2 weeks?
Yeah, none, because 2 weeks was so 10 years ago. If anyone has their patients wearing for 2 week cycle, unless you accepted a clin check and didn't look down at the staging bar and realize like a line just gave you 10 or 12 aligners, which is
It was
stupid
going
for
too
most
fast. Yeah.
things, then you're like, shoot, I better slow this down and like take some time so my elastics can work or whatever. So unless you've made a mistake, 2 weeks is just absolutely, I can't even talk about that. Yeah,
I'm going
that's
to give Kelly a
ridiculous.
stroke right now. She's
Yeah, I'm
squirming in
like
her
that. Yeah,
chair.
that's so 10 years ago. If anything, 7 days is like, 7 days is what you should be doing. But patients who are well educated, cooperative, on dental monitoring, and I'll let you talk about that a little bit. We go, go, go. Once the past plastic has lost its bounce, and exceptions, of course, sometimes we need time for deep bite intrusion or the elastics. We don't want to rush through 70 trays just because we can. Sometimes we need time for the growth, but for all intensive purposes, nothing more than 7 days. No,
Yeah,
no.
agreed. So studies show that Invisalign aligners with Smart Track technology, that the most active time of when those trays have the most kind of consistent force and the most springiness, and I'm sure all of you anecdotally who've done Invisalign can agree with this, it's the first 3 days. Once you get
Yes.
past that point, after 7 days, the amount of force generated by the trays has fallen right off. It's very little. So what we do with our mixed dentition patients is we used to actually have them all changing at 5 days. Then we realized, because we're using dental monitoring, and for those who don't know what dental monitoring is, essentially patients get like cheek retractors that their phone slides into. And dental monitoring is a product created by the company Dental Monitoring that allows us to have them take videos and photos of how the trays are fitting on their teeth. And they do this weekly or even sooner, which I'll talk about in a sec, that you then have access to, that allows you to see how well the trays are tracking. You don't have to go ahead and specifically look at every single tray fit every week, because the artificial intelligence that's built in will send them a message saying, hey, Kelly, your trays are fitting really well on your teeth. Go ahead and switch to your next aligners. But if they are not tracking well, then you will end up having a notification or a message from dental monitoring telling you that, as the clinic, on the clinic side, that you need to check into this case. And it will send a message then to the patient saying, hey, Kelly, your trays aren't fitting well enough. Please wear them for 3 additional days and then take another scan.
Mm-hmm.
So this dental monitoring then allows us, one of the things that's very cool about dental monitoring specific product, because Invisalign is also has a product that's similar, but not as comprehensive. But with dental monitoring, you can have what's called a variable scan rate. What that means is we set up our patients to scan with their phone, and the parents help to start with, but it's very, very easy. It takes 5 minutes to do. And so they'll scan their teeth with their phone, taking these videos, and they'll do it once every 7 days. If they get 3 goes, quote unquote, in a row, where they've got 3 times that we've said, go ahead and switch to your next aligners, then those patients will get a speed up till 6 days. And you can control the parameters. So we then control the parameters to say, I need 3 in a row to go from 7 to 6. And then if they get another 3 in a row, then they can go from 6 to 5. And so then that way, we're kind of tailoring this specifically to that patient. And if they were at 7 theoretically and they were doing really poorly and they got 3 no-goes in a row, then they would be changed from 7 to 8 or 8 to 9 or 9 to 10. You can tell the parents that we're going to start off at a week. If they're doing really well and they get 3 in a row, they get to go move to 6. If they get 3 more in a row, they go to 5. So their treatment time is going to depend on how well they're doing. And so it's just super, super cool seeing the progress and how this really motivates patients and parents to get the goes. It doesn't result, like, we're not, again, mixed dentition, we're not resorbing roots. We're not like, these are not really major concerns that we have, but like the amount of force that's on the teeth still is very minimal compared to what the teeth can handle, because the bone is not really established around them and everything's developed. These kids are pretty much made of rubber.
Yeah.
So
And so things, yeah, like things can go faster and it's amazing. As long as the kids are wearing them, yeah, you
yes,
can move faster. They're tracking it for you. They're also monitoring your OHI, so thus you don't need the little blue stickers,
yeah,
the little blue dots on the trays, which
yeah.
are don't wear off in 7 days anyways. And fun fact is the teenagers, they can just peel those off. So smart teens are like, whatever. I never look at that. I mean, they could have brushed their teeth immaculately that one day. It's all a bunch of that's
Yeah,
crazy,
it's
crazy.
just it's not
I
really efficient being 7 days. So
no.
the lie detector test for us on dental monitoring, like, and it, like Kelly said, it'll actually send you a message saying, and it will show you all the photos. So it'll point out that like oral hygiene is insufficient and they're not doing
Yeah.
well enough with it for hygiene. And honestly, it's like I'll have patients. I have tons of kids who their parents come in and they're like, you're asking them like, how did it go? And they're like, terrible, the worst. Shouldn't do Invisalign. And you're like,
Mm.
what? What happened? Why? And then they're like, they come home from school and their trays aren't fitting well on their teeth and they left them in their lunchbox and I put them back in at 3:30. They've been out for 4 hours. And then you look at their teeth though and they're like perfect. Like they moved
Yeah.
so well. You're so happy with the results. And that's the thing that's so cool is it's like, well, to be honest, even the kids who kind of suck as mixed
Yeah.
dentition, it works. Like
Yeah.
they might not wear them for like 8 hours a day, and yet it still works because their
Yeah.
teeth and their bone are so easy to move. And so then I'll just reassure the parent and be like, I know that they're not doing perfectly right now, but I
Yeah.
care more about how their teeth are moving. Whatever they're doing, it's good enough. They're doing great.
Yeah.
And then the parents will be
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Like I was
Yeah.
so worried that nothing was working and that it was all like going terrible. And I'm like,
Yeah.
nope, nope, nope. Don't worry. Everything's great. It's all going smooth because their teeth are moving and that's what we care about. Do you ever
Exactly.
get
It's
that
just
too?
like some kids don't do all 30 math questions, but they still know the math.
They
I
still
wasn't
they
that
still got
kid,
an
but
A on the
still.
test. Yeah,
So
exactly.
what do you care about? The 30 questions or like did they
Did they?
consolidate has the learning been
Yeah,
consolidated? Do they have the results? Can they write the
yeah,
test and get the A? Done
yeah,
deal. So
exactly. That's what we care about. That's a great analogy. I like that.
but yeah, so I think that's really good. And then so we were talking about like the difference between like Invisalign first and comprehensive. I think another big difference because us setting up when I set up for doctors and now they're starting to listen to us and they're changing their products. And again, setting up to perfection because we're in that adult mindset. Be very careful because Invisalign first leaves primate spaces, which are the wiggle room, or especially around the canines.
No, it
So that
doesn't.
you're
It
it
doesn't.
doesn't.
It does
It
not.
does.
No, I don't think so.
No, I think it does. And
Okay, maybe
in
they changed
adults,
it recently.
yeah. So yeah, yeah, yeah.
Welcome to Royal Rumble
I will
2023.
stand corrected if I'm wrong. In irregardless,
Oh no,
in a
good.
child's
I
case,
okay, so Invisalign
you
First is
need to
now
leave
giving
space.
they're now giving spaces around the primary canines?
Maybe you just haven't seen Invisalign first in a long time. Maybe
It could be
could
since I
be. I
use so
don't.
much teen. But
So
yes, so I'll
so
let you
yeah.
continue.
So
Sorry.
when it comes back, if it's a primary canine, not a rotated adult canine, but if it's a primary canine, they will leave space on either side. They'll leave the primate spaces open in an Invisalign first setup
Cool.
because they know that the adult canine is bigger and it needs room to come into through that doorway. But if you're using the comprehensive package, the teen or adult comprehensive package, the AI is set to close all spaces, right? Close spaces. That's what we do. We consolidate spaces. And so it's blocking you in. So if you're not watching out, if it's not on a checklist for you, like, hey, this is a growing smile, there's lots of things we leave room for, like leave room for the bite jump, leave room for growth, for elastics and things like that. There's things that we have on a checklist. And one of them is, have I left primate spaces? So that's my one main difference I always look for if it's a comprehensive package is primate spaces around canines that aren't erupted. And even if they are erupted, if they're rotated, we always leave space anyways. You can
Mhm.
always close room, but if you have teeth touching, they're not going to fully express. So we're
Okay.
pretty crazy
So
on that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good to know. So just for context, why Kelly and I were getting into Royal Rumble of 2023, I just didn't realize that. Because traditionally with Invisalign First, what happens is back in the day, you would be like they would close all the spaces. So if primary
Oh,
canines are 1 millimeter less in width, mesial distally,
okay.
than the adult canines. So what would commonly happen is you'd go ahead and you'd finish your Invisalign First case or your Invisalign Teen Comprehensive with primary canines, whatever. All that space is closed. And then
Yeah.
your canines erupt. And like Kelly was saying, they'll twist, they'll rotate, they'll go crowded, they'll get blocked out, whatever. It's just not enough space. So with the, what she's saying now is with Invisalign First that they've now, which I've been doing this for years and years and years in Invisalign First and in comprehensive, is ensuring that you leave 0.5 millimeters. Like this is every single case.
Yes.
Whenever there's primary canines, always leave 0.5 millimeter to the mesial and 0.5 millimeter to the distal minimum.
Yeah.
So that when those erupting canines come in, they're not squeezed between the lateral and the first primary molar or premolar if that's erupted, so that it ends up having too little space and it rotates and comes in completely twisted. So
Exactly.
if
And
you
don't worry
are,
about your overjet or if it's protrusive or any of that
yeah, you'll
business.
close the space later.
Yeah. Just let them come in. And then same thing like with the primary molars that you're anticipating, they're wiggly, they're flappy, they're going to come out. People get over energetic because premolars are smaller, mesial disc or AP, like width wise, than the permanents are smaller than the primary. So they start to close the space, anticipating, correcting the AP, and like let the teeth come in. Leave
Yeah.
yourself lots of room. That's the most efficient way to treat is to let everything rotate, align, level, all these things while they have wiggle room around them, and then consolidate your space later.
Agreed.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's perfect. But that's
Essentially,
Mhm.
yeah, what Kelly's saying again is just to add a little bit more color commentary.
Yeah.
Is it's so true. Like your lower second primary molars or your E's, the erupting tooth is so much smaller than that tooth. So that's your leeway space. And you have a
Mhm.
little bit on your D's sometimes, and on the uppers you've got less leeway space, but you've got that leeway space. And so when those teeth erupt, you have that extra room then. And what you can do is you run either class 2 elastics if you need everything to come forward on the lower arch, or you can run class 3 elastics if you need the upper arch to come forward and the lower arch to pull back. So
Mhm.
that's the whole beauty of treating Invisalign first, or like younger patients treating growing smiles, because you have the ability to modify their growth, number one, with elastics, but you also have the ability to modify their tooth positions by not allowing their lower first molars to creep forward unless you want them to. Because what normally happens is you lose your primary molars and everything drifts mesially. And then we
Right.
might spend a whole bunch of time using class 2 elastics and sequentially distalizing later, or using a Carrier or whatever, to back all those teeth back up, including the first molar. But instead, if it's like, well, no, use aligners or whatever it's going to be to prevent those teeth from drifting forward. And then you use class 2 or class 3 elastics to finish moving the dental aspect of the bite. And
Yeah.
you've accomplished that class correction. So there's almost no case, in my opinion, that if you started and you saw this patient at 7 or 8 years old for their initial ortho visit, or you did a hygiene check in the chair, there's no 7 or 8-year-old, in my opinion, almost ever, with very few probably exclusions to this statement, that need to have any permanent teeth pulled.
Yeah.
You can
No.
set the case up to make sure that everything should be able to fit using that leeway space, caveat, except for their wisdom teeth. Their wisdom
Yeah.
teeth will probably get impacted because you're not letting everything drift forward. But there's really no reason, if you catch them early enough, that you should ever have to pull a lower incisor or pull
Yeah.
premolars or anything like that, in my opinion. But
Yeah, which
sometimes,
is amazing. What a service that you
what a
caught them
service.
early and intervened.
Yeah.
And again, speaking to like if you have someone in your neighborhood who you can refer to who treats the same or knows this stuff, we so often hear like, oh, aligners can't do this case, or like there's just so many ways. There's a lot of different ways to do everything. There's so many tools in our toolbox in orthodontics. So there's no wrong way, probably. Actually, I
Yeah.
should
Well,
say that there's a little bit of
there's
wrong
a wrong
way.
way here. We'll come back to this. Just a quick bookmark that we'll come back to in a second here. I'll let
Yeah.
you keep talking, but remind me, I'm going to tell you one thing that's very wrong to do, but keep going.
Okay. And I'll tell you one thing that's wrong to do. Do not be pulling out impacted canines.
Yes,
Is that
yes,
it?
yes. Well,
What
not
in the
impacted. I
hell?
was going to say do not pull out canines, really,
Oh,
pretty much, period. Because
period.
this to me is like the biggest, like, do not do. I love that we
Yeah.
both thought the same thing.
Again, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I think people too early,
Uh huh.
doctors too early, And actually, I've seen an orthodontist do it too. Just blew my mind at an ortho convention talking about that Jesus did not intend for those to be there was the statement. So he pulled them out because it's more efficient for him to close it up. I was just like the cornerstone of the mouth. People started to leave. So whatever. I just could not
Yeah,
even.
that's the one
But
cardinal sin.
what Jesus, well, Jesus, I'm saying Jesus now, but
Jesus looks down on you if you pull
yeah,
canines.
that's horrible. I can't even believe it. Um, yeah, but they're the cornerstone of the mouth, and these are developing smiles. Our job is to create the parking lot for those, but people get in, they jump in too early. They're in the shallow end. All of a sudden, oh my God, I'm treating teenagers, and that
Yeah,
tooth's not
yeah,
supposed to be there. And they're so used to just IPRing the posterior and tucking things in. And they're like, okay, well, let's just move that impacted palatal canine out of the way so that I can move the roots and do more IPR and tuck them back.
yeah.
And you're just like, say what? And it's so hard because we're more educated to correct them. And then they feel absolutely sick for the rest of their life. I'm sure they feel super guilty. I mean, they didn't know better, but they shouldn't have been treating that case if they didn't do their
Yeah.
full due diligence and learn. So be careful. Like you have to be careful. These are growing kids. They deserve the best. We all deserve the best, even adults, but adults, we have a
Treat
decision.
ideal, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
We have a,
think that's just
oh,
it. Is it's kind of like, so the reason why, for anybody wondering, is that the canines have the longest root, and they're meant to give canine guidance. So if you
mm-hmm.
extract those teeth and you move the premolars in that spot instead, because it's very easy, right? Someone's got like, let's not talk even impacted canines, but it's just blocked out, right? So
Yeah.
they've got the vampire fangs way up high, and you're like, oh crap, we don't have room for that. If we just go ahead and we
Yeah.
pull out the canines, then everything just fits. There's only
Yeah, the
one
shape of the
time.
premolars, it looks like a canine. You
Yeah.
can do it. Sometimes we have to do it because the canine doesn't exist
Yeah,
or not.
exactly. So
Yeah.
sometimes we have to compromise. I will say there's only one time ever that I've pulled out canines on a non-growing patient. It was on like a 45, 50-year-old.
Yeah.
And that's because the canines were blocked out and there was recession 3/4 of the way up the root.
Yeah.
And so bringing that tooth in position, the teeth were still so hopelessly compromised that it did not make sense when the premolars were in good shape and they were way blocked out. And so we pulled the canines. Other than that, though, like just to say, hey, we've got a 13-year-old, they've got no space. We're going to go ahead and pull their adult canines. And then that way everything's lined up. I don't like hazarding like giant stamens, big stamens, but like I think that is getting into potential malpractice range. So like
100%.
be very careful on that one. And if you had to pull teeth, so first of all, our goal is to try and not pull teeth, but I'm also a
Right.
realist. There are some cases that you look at and you say, there is too many teeth, and even doing surgery here is not going to help, especially
Yeah. If
sometimes
they're
in
going to look
Asian.
like a horse for the rest of their life, but you've protected their airway, like,
Yeah,
have you protected their marital future? I don't think so.
So
I'm going to get in
yeah,
trouble.
there's a lot of different philosophies and opinions, but the thing is, like in my opinion, and I know in Kelly's too, like I'm not heavy on extractions. Don't get me wrong,
No.
I'm not heavy on extractions, but like look at the stuff that Kenji Ojima does, where you've got
Yeah.
patients that have so much crowding, and these are Japanese patients in that case,
Yeah.
but in Asian populations where they've got bimaxillary protrusion, their lips, they can barely close their lips together, and they've still got so much crowding, and you look at it, and you could extract 4 premolars and retract the teeth, and you look at their initial position, and their teeth are actually still in the same exact position because they had so much crowding. You didn't actually make their airway smaller or their arches smaller. So there are
He
some
has stunning cases.
Yeah.
He's stunning. So
there is a time and place, in my opinion, still for extractions
100%.
where there's no other options. But it is never, ever, ever the canine unless that canine was so compromised that you have no other choice. Ooh,
Yeah,
there's our rant.
oftentimes we would take out what seems to be like a perfectly placed first premolar and bring down the crazy canine into position, which is a lot of work. We have to work really hard to do that. And so, but yeah, you see like the first premolars and you think, let's just take out those crazy guys and move those forward. But wrong way. Like that's just the wrong way. Yeah, 100%. Don't do that. And
I like that we both thought the same thing when they're like,
oh my
there's
God.
one thing not to do.
Yeah, because we wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I'd have to retire, and I will not be setting that case up for you, even if it's on the prescription. I'll be bouncing that back to you, so don't be sending me that as a joke. April Fools, that would be a good April Fool's joke on me.
I'm just going to send you one and be like, Kelly, I need you to take out all their incisors too on April Fools.
Jesus wants these out. That's
for sure.
crazy. Okay, so that's that. So what were we talking about now? We all now I feel
Yeah, we're
like
completely
sweating
off
from
track.
canines coming out.
Let's talk
Um,
about some of the things to watch out for with aligners. So essentially, tell me, like, we know obviously that you can take out aligners to eat food, which is excellent, and they can still have all the same things they normally do.
yeah,
But
yeah. So for like the use, like when you're trying to, sometimes it's convincing mom. The kids don't need too much convincing, but the great thing for these young populations, because our kids are doing so many activities, it's insane. So they can eat anything they want. That includes candy. Of course, they need to rinse their teeth. So swishing with water. So parents who are over concerned about these aligners coming in and out, it is a non-issue. These are like self-limiting things that we're putting on ourselves as dentists or orthodontists or parents. Like we're getting in our own way. So kids are really, really amazing with aligners in general, I would say. So they can eat anything they want, even though they have attachments on their teeth. That doesn't matter at all. Eat anything you want. They can eat candy, which is fantastic. They can only eat gum when their aligners are out. Because trust me, I've tried. I try everything. But it's very freeing. And for kids who are playing musical instruments, they can still play because with brackets and wires or RPs, God forbid,
mhm.
the flute instruments in particular are really difficult to play. So that's amazing. Kids who are in sports, of course, we do have mouth guards and things that can fit over brackets and wires. We've been doing that for hundreds of years, but it's a mouthful, right? It's a lot. And so sport guards can fit right over top of your aligners. So if you have a bite and boil or anything like that, you can actually bite in it with your aligners in, but we just do a wiggle side to side, back to front. So make a trough, but now you've got that extra layer of protection because I don't let them take them out. You have to take your
Interesting.
elastics out. You can't be wearing elastics with hockey mouth
With a
guards, but
mouth
we have
guard?
kids who are
Huh.
playing like 25 hours of hockey or taekwondo or whatever. And so they constantly have to have their mouth guards in. And so I just don't want them to give up 25 hours of aligner wear.
Wow.
I will say mixed dentition. My own daughter, I sent her to school, obviously, with her aligners in, and I'm not like super hygienist that I'm that worried about her oral hygiene, but I let her eat her lunch. And when she ate her lunch, the rule was it goes in, if it's not in your face, it's in the case. So in her lunchbox, her case is sitting there. She takes her aligners out, she puts them in the case, she eats, she swishes with water, and she doesn't have to put them back in. That was my rule for my mixed dentition. And when she gets home from school, naturally, these kids all have their cookies or whatever. They have another snack. That's when they brush their teeth and they put them back in. And like to your point, they did fine. Like my daughter was in and out of treatment like crazy, and I wasn't on her at all. Like I really wasn't. She's my third child. My first two had fixed brackets. My third child,
She got
I
the
was not the
aligners.
same parent.
And I'm just going to
And so
stop you for a sec to put a pin where
yeah,
we're at right now. We'll come back to this pin.
okay,
Just I want to talk about a few of the things we were just mentioning. So first of all, very cool about the aligners and mouth guards. I've never done that.
mm-hmm.
We traditionally have told patients that they can go ahead and use a bite and boil. Again, no custom made mouth guards from the dentist because those aren't going to
Yeah,
fit. So you have to have a bite and boil. And we would just tell them to just go ahead and
put out.
remold it once a month and take their liners
Okay.
out. But I like that if they can go ahead and actually mold their mouth guard with their trays and then they don't even need to take their trays out, that's smart.
Mm-hmm.
I think especially what I would potentially do, just hearing your strategies, is I'd probably gauge it based off of how elite they are with their sports.
Yeah.
If they're going to be like they're in like a super league, they're playing like AAA hockey, then I'd probably be like, okay, yeah, let's go ahead um, and do that method. But if it's like, oh, he plays in house league and he plays like twice a week for an hour and a half each,
Yeah.
then I'd be like, take him out. We'll just do a bite and boil. So I like
100%.
that. Um, Interesting with what you said about the hygiene, that when you have them take them out and they don't put them back in until coming home from school, because we have lots of patients who do that just anecdotally. We just
Yeah.
find out that happens and it still works in a lot of these cases. We are more strict with them
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
Grand Prairie, where I live, like the patient population struggles with hygiene a
Yeah.
lot. And so I have to be like the opposite because I'll have kids coming in with like a significant amount of like plaque and like we'll bring them in
Mhm.
every week even for plaque indicator and it's lighting up like a Christmas tree. Like they haven't brushed their teeth in a week and they're getting
Yeah.
demon around attachments and stuff, which I know is not a lot of your experiences and like bigger centers where the
Yeah.
hygiene is more emphasized. But so we have to be a bit more strict on that one. And I just wanted to say one thing on that, which was the one hazard, the one thing that I'm like
Mhm.
very strict with, which is pop and Slurpees
Oh
and
yeah.
sugary drinks with trays.
Yeah. No, take them out. I mean, you would take them out. You will not lose anything from that hour or two, or even if they're walking around the neighborhood, they cannot be drinking even like even juice.
Juice,
It's
yeah.
just not worth it. So unless it's water, even milk, like we know
Yeah,
baby bottle
no.
syndrome, milk. Like so
Yeah.
just if it's not water, take it out. I'd rather have you take it out, and water is your in between. So swish with water before you put them back in. We do not have our kids well, I'm totally not that hygienist. Like even for brackets and wires, bringing your toothbrush. Like these kids don't even have time to eat their lunch in current day. Like they're not going to the bathroom to brush their teeth. No.
Meanwhile, I'm
So
a dentist hard ass over here, whereas I'm
no.
like, here's 3 travel toothbrush. But again, it's patient population
No, we
based.
give
So
them travel toothbrushes, like for
yeah,
sleepovers and camp and things, but not for school because they honestly don't have time.
yeah.
But swishing with water, eating cheese, things that erase sugars. I'm all about erasing sugars. I had a lot of cavities as a kid, so I
Yeah,
want to prevent decay for sure.
totally.
Uh, but yeah, I just don't find it's a reality
Yeah,
when it.
it's we'll be honest here, both with brackets and wires and with aligners, it can be hard. It depends.
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
depends on the mindset. So like what we do is because I do have enough kids that are horrendous. Like I'll just say it straight up.
yeah.
Like they're horrible with hygiene. That I can't give them an inch or they're going to take a mile. If I say like
Yeah,
you don't
for
need to brush
sure.
with your aligners, like they'll come in and they won't have brushed for a week. Like it's insane.
Yeah,
And they're starting to get some significant issues. And so we're like a strict. I know people hear me talking about eating with aligners in for other
yeah.
protocols. For adults, we never have kids eat with their aligners in except if they're jumping a crossbite. While the
Okay.
tooth is in
Yes.
trauma, then they eat with their aligners in and they change every 3 days and just jump through that crossbite if it's an anterior crossbite. Once they're out of the
Okay.
crossbite, they're no longer eating with aligners in. So that's number one. And then we do like we just say to them like we have an unlimited supply of travel toothbrushes here. So
Right.
every time you come in, it costs us $1.50 or whatever. Like here's another travel toothbrush. Here's a travel toothbrush. And I
Yeah.
agree. Like a lot of the kids, like I'm realistic that they're not, but at least I'm getting them to brush better at home because they understand the rules of orthodontics are that you have to brush every time you finish eating.
Yeah.
And I do get some who are all stars, and I get some who are horrible, but yeah, I'm no judgment here in anybody else's
Yeah.
case. Like I know I'm a total hard ass, and
Yeah.
so I
We do
recognize
give
that.
them like, I mean, we give them a pretty awesome kit. Like we give every single or Oral B has a great, here's a plug for Oral B. Oral B has a great ortho startup kit and it's, I want to say it's $90. Like that's your wholesale cost. Again, you can add that on to the itemized, like you could add that on to their new patient cost. So really they're paying for it, but it's a huge value. So you get an electric toothbrush, we give them extra heads that seems a little ridiculous now, but we give them an extra little head that's meant to go under brackets, but you can use it in your aligners. I don't care if you like, I
Yeah,
just
it's
we give them the polydent, like the retainer bright tablets,
yeah.
the bubble bath for their teeth. So, at nighttime while they're eating their dinner, they can give their aligners a bubble bath and they stay pretty clear. Then there's no need for really brushing them. But we do give them a huge size bottle of, technically it's like fluoride plus disclosant agent all in one. It's like
Oh,
a
cool.
one-time rinse or whatever, because then they get into the habit of you're not going to leave the house if your teeth are purple. So we used to suggest to do that at night,
Oh, that's a
but
good
now I suggest in
idea.
the morning because it's the social
Yeah.
factor. You can't go to school with purple teeth.
Does it
Anyway,
work
so but
well? I've never used that. Is
oh
it
yeah,
like a Listerine brand? What's the brand on that?
yeah, I mean, I think both brands, Oral B definitely has one, but they're
Okay.
whatever it is, both Crest and Colgate, like the competition, they both have one.
Okay.
And then there's also just pure out disclosant, like Agent Blue or whatever. I don't know what they currently call it, but I
Sure.
totally had that for my kids, like crazy, and it prevents them from having to bite on the disclosing tablets where
Yeah,
it
and then
really
swish
gets into the
around
grooves
and
of your teeth. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's super easy and it
Okay.
doesn't stain your attachments or your aligners or whatever,
Yeah.
but it's kind of handy.
Kelly
But we
tried.
give them, yeah, we give them like a nice big kit, but for the most part, we just tell them to take it out, rinse with water. That's their daytime routine. And then of course we want them to be brushing very well morning and night. because they're not perfect. If they brush perfectly, if any of us were brushing perfectly one time a day, that would be enough to prevent decay and everything, but we're not perfect. So we have to try twice. So that's that. But I think we have these myths that kids aren't going to wear them, kids or teens for that matter. They're not going to wear them, that they're going to get all these stains, that they're going to lose them. That's the other big one. So what? Who cares if they lose them? They're active for 3 days. So my instructions, you don't have to call me. And some of these kids are not dental monitored or adults. If you lose it, move on. I gave them all to you. And we have stickers. So it says stop. So in case you get out of control, but we've never had that happen where they're changing once a day. I know my own daughter, she went to a festival, like at school, I dropped her off and she was going to eat candy. And I mean, it's not very nice for the environment, but she literally probably just threw them in the field. Like, I can move on, like whatever, like there they go. That was like one set I remember her losing. And it's again, not because I was on her, she was just a normal child. But you can move on. They're flexible.
Just go to the next ones. It's not an emergency. It doesn't require a phone call.
No.
We tell them if it happens twice in a row, we want to know.
Yeah.
But if it just happens on the one,
you want to know how it's tracking. You want to know it's fitted.
Because sometimes you get it where the trays break or something because they have such the trays, they're so small, and so if there's lots of attachments and they're grabbing and they're kind of pulling it really hard from one side to the other, they're not taking it with both hands on both sides, they rip the tray and then they break it. And then if they do that 3 days in a row, and then they've gone like one day, then things stop fitting, and you want to get them in to explain to them like, no, you can't just grab your tray on the one side and pull really hard and it keeps breaking. You need to go ahead and dislodge the other side and then take it off together.
Yeah. Click, click, peel. That's what we tell the kids. Click, click, peel. Because they do get in the habit. Yeah. They get in the habit of that same action and it always tears in the same spot. It's usually like a missing tooth spot. So, but yeah. And then the other thing is that the other myth is like aligners can't do this type of treatment. I mean, we hear that with adults too. And you're just like, you can't do it with this treatment. You can't do it with the solution. But and again, that's not to say I'm super excited about kind of the space because for the last 18 months, I was kind of doing kind of different things, but mix and matching. We have so many tools in our toolbox. So don't be so hard-headed that you have to do everything with the plastic that you've, paid that lab bill for. Like, we have accessories, we have carriers, we have elastics,
use buttons, use elastic.
Yeah, you're an artist. Be creative and think outside the box and post these questions on your Facebook group or your study groups. Like, ask how other people have done it rather than spend an extra 6 or 8 months spinning your wheels trying to get it done with just plastic. Sometimes maybe you have to pay an extra $200 for an extra little accessory, but totally worth it. So I love the idea of mixing and matching, which I was totally drinking the Kool-Aid and doing it the hard way for many years. I will do everything with just plastic.
Yeah, it's almost like a point of pride that you're almost like, I can do it with just that. And then sometimes you're like, hey, there's a high canine. Why don't we just go ahead and put a button on that, run a vertical elastic and just pull that canine down in like no time at all instead of forcing it with the plastic.
Exclude it from the tray for a period of time.
Because that's a great point. One of the things with mixed dentition is being able to know when to not do something.
Yes.
When you first start, you run into this problem that you try to do everything and you burn them out because you keep them in treatment for 5 years.
Yeah.
And then you start realizing like, okay, there's a high canine and there's room for it and it's coming in on its own. Get them into nighttime wear if you've done everything else and just let that tooth drop. And then once it's dropped, if it's a bit crooked, then twist it back and you're good. But you end up like, sometimes just getting in your own way. And again, that's through like the course, our goals and our trainings and the ClinCheck setups is to be like, first and foremost, results. But then second of all is how do we do this the most comfortably and efficiently for the patient and for us to be enjoying the experience and also making sure it's profitable too while getting those results. And so a lot of the time, like one of the best tools that you have in your toolkit that's not the aligners, obviously, we talked about buttons and elastics, but the other tool is a pair of crown and bridge scissors or any scissors to cut the aligner and get it out of the way. If an erupting tooth is hitting the aligner, you take your scissors, you chop off the back of the tray where that tooth's coming in, you leave the tray in everywhere else. Like let's say it's a second premolar's coming in and it's hitting the tray funky. Well, just trim the tray, let that tooth come in, cut off the first molar and the second premolar. You probably don't want them wearing the tray full time if that's the case, because you don't want that first molar to super erupt and then end up having it that they only hit that one tooth. But especially at nighttime, like we even show patients, like this is how you cut the aligners. Just go ahead and cut off all those teeth that aren't fitting. Or let's even say that you had like a canine and that canine's coming in wrong. We'll cut the tray like kind of distal to the lateral. And then if it's fitting well on the other posterior teeth, we might even go ahead and cut the tray distal to the canine. So only the canine is missing, as long as they have enough teeth and enough attachments that that other little piece of the tray can snap in real well.
Yeah,
because we don't want it to be a choking hazard. So if it's not fitting well, then it's like, nope, cut the whole tray, get it all the way. If it snaps in nicely, then we'll have them wear the tray in two pieces sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. So yeah, don't be afraid to like change it up. Because sometimes you spent a significant amount of effort setting up that digital plan and other big things are still happening. So if that's just a minor part of the plan, you need it to hold steady. So this wouldn't be that little 3-piece back here, like, you know, your little mini aligner bridge. If you're supposed to be actively expanding that part of the arch because it's in crossbite, yeah, that's not going to work, obviously. But if you're just holding those guys steady while other things are happening over here, you're detorquing the teeth, let it continue to roll until the end of that set or near, at least get a little further down the field before you abort mission. And which it was one very good point. When you're talking to parents, I don't think we've already said this, when you're talking to parents and children, let them know that this is not your adult aligner case where you've got, you know, your big, like golf. We do a big, what do you call it? I don't play golf. Like the big up the tee. The drive. Kelly does not leave her computer chair, so I don't get out much.
Even when I say, Kelly, take a break and like take the week off, she's just like,
I use the golf analogy. Apparently, so yes, the drive. But with adults, we tend to do like our big set, our drive, our whatever
our like chip.
Okay, chip. Oh my God, I need to get out in the world.
And putt.
Our chip, and then our putt.
I preemptively thought I'd help you on that last one.
Okay,
the putt.
Thank you. Yeah,
it's called a putt. No,
thank you. So that would be normal. That's not a mistake. That's part of the adult process, and we all feel really good if it happens that way. But with mixed dentition and teens, mixed dentition more so. Oftentimes we have multiple sets. We are pivoting and adapting as we go with all these erupting teeth. So parents can get frustrated because you're coming in for a few more scans and you have extra boxes, and maybe mom's had Invisalign and she only had 2 sets and they get a little frustrated. So you just need to communicate why it's happening.
When am I going to be done? Why is they're on their 6th batch already?
Exactly. So you just, let them know that this is different. And we're going to constantly be pivoting and adapting for the best fitting aligners, for the best experience, for the most efficient set. Just,
I'll give you a nice analogy here, Kelly.
Yeah.
So this is my analogy that I use, which works really well. I compare, like you said, the first batch, or like the adult set, I should say, is compared to golf. Multiple sets, right? Yada, yada, yada. Okay. When it comes to mixed dentition cases, they're like shoes. We get them a new pair of shoes. We get our kids a new pair of shoes at the beginning of the school year, and you hope that it's going to last until the end of the school year, and then they'll get a new one. But sometimes they lose them, or they get broken, or they wear through them, or something happens. They outgrow them. And you need to get a new set of shoes before the school year is up. Other times you make it through the whole year. And so we're going to be getting them lots of different batches of aligners like shoes for the next few years. And so as new teeth come in, or something comes in crooked, or their teeth change, something like that, they may have to, I think I just changed my microphone, it said, but we may have to go ahead and...
It just went loud for a little second.
It just... Okay.
You sound the same now. It just got a little
I hit a button on my microphone and changed it to my webcam mic. I'm back to normal?
You sound good. Yep.
Okay, cool. So I just tell them it's like a pair of shoes.
That's good.
They might outgrow them. They might need more. It's not a big deal. It's not a mistake or a problem that's been made. It's just their teeth have outgrown their aligners. And that is like, so that any time that these trays aren't fitting, if there's a problem or an issue when they're in them at nighttime, please let us know. We'll get them in for a visit. We'll take a new scan. We'll get them a new batch of trays, and we'll get them a new pair of shoes again.
Don't be that parent that forces them to wear those shoes to the end of it.
And that's the thing. So 2 big keys of this. So one that I just want to clarify a point from earlier. When we're doing nighttime, we do 2 weeks per tray because we're
Okay.
more holding them. And like Kelly said, they would do
Yeah.
1 month per tray. So we're just holding their position. We're not changing a lot. Like we do 2 weeks because we often are changing the position a decent amount. Like we're guiding and correcting and fixing and all that stuff. But I don't disagree that doing 1 month is also totally fine if there's no major movements that you're doing. Then
Yes.
the other aspect is, so we do the 2 weeks. We give them 1 year's worth of trays for our office. So that'd be like 26 trays or so, and book them back in a year. Or if you were doing 1 month per tray, then you could order like 12 trays. And then we go ahead and book them back for that appointment right away for that year out. We give them all of their trays. We don't monitor them on dental monitoring at our practice in that year. And we tell them if your trays stop fitting before the end of the year, just give us a call, right? Not a big deal. And so by setting that all up properly, we get that all the time, that it's like, oh, they lost a whole bunch of teeth. So we're coming in now and here's their trays and they're not fitting as well as they could. And then it's like, okay, cool. Scan them, pictures, new trays. Okay, we'll see you in a year again. Bye. And we leave all the attachments on at the end of their first set. So we leave them on their primary, at our office, we leave them on their primary teeth and we leave them on their sixes. The reason why is that it prevents trays from stopping their fit. I found we used to take them off on everybody. And then the problem was is that all these patients were coming back being like, their trays don't fit.
Okay.
But then we left all the attachments on. So we still use those. And when they lose those teeth, the attachments go with it. And so at the very end, all they're left with is attachments on their sixes. And that still just gives something for their trays to snap in. So like the ideal way for us, again, just taking the listener through this whole experience is like, maybe the kid comes in at 8 to 9. We tell them we're going to do 6 months to 1 year of full-time wear, and then it'll be nighttime for the rest. Unless they have issues at the end, we'll put them back into full-time wear for that second phase. Financial part is all encompassed. It's all including. I will take you from start to finish, everything involved.
Okay.
And that's my guarantee to you. And again, these teen cases, like when they get to the 12, 13, 14, whatever, they're really, really easy to finish the case once you've got everything set up. Like they're the easiest cases in the world for the teen aspect. So then we finish the 6 months to a year, get them a new batch of aligners. We take off their interior attachments, so nothing's going to get like demineralized or stained on interior attachments. Then we go ahead, they pick up their new trays from the waiting room. They don't come in for an appointment because we're using conventional attachments.
Right.
And so then they go ahead, they snap on all those trays in the waiting room, and it's like, sweet, they fit well. Okay, cool. See you in a year. We book them that appointment right then and there. So if they ever reschedule or cancel it or whatever, like we always make sure they have an appointment on the schedule. Then we see them back a year later. We take new photos, take a new scan. They've lost a couple primary teeth and new teeth are coming in. Cool. Get them a new batch. See them a year later. Book them an appointment. They pick up the batch from the front desk. They try them in the waiting room. Fit good. Cool. Then we see them a year later again. And we just keep doing that. And then slowly but surely they lost all their attachments. So the goal would be is that by the time that they're like 12, 13, 14, whatever, that they're in class 1 occlusion, because we might be using like nighttime elastics or something like that if we had to do that, or mandibular advancement feature. But essentially they're in class 1 occlusion with attachments on their sixes. And then their 12-year-old molars come in. We make sure the contacts are tight. We take off the attachments from their second molar or their first molars, and we get them their final viveras. Or if they're going to have a lingual wire, they get their lingual wire. We at our practice, because I know this question's common, and many different ways of doing it, and I think we were different compared to how you were doing it before. We are still primarily focused on, like, we don't do lingual wires unless, like, I reserve the right to do a lingual wire on anybody that I choose. But I don't usually do a lingual wire on kids if they were really good with their treatment, if they were responsible. What did you guys do, or what's your preference? Hit me with your thoughts.
Yeah. So, I mean, the orthodontists that I have worked for, like myself full time, that are like my orthodontists, and I was bonding for them. We've all done. We do lingual wires, and even on the phase ones that we just prettied up their front 4 teeth to make mom and patient happy, and it was just like a phase 1 in and out. We do bond there for sure. We bond everything. What I would say is during the transitory phase of like, whether it's a Holly or a Thoreau or an active aligner or a passive aligner, whatever, that we are cutting sunroofs out of, and creatively making our own aligners. I'm for all of that, for that middle ground. I think is fine unless there's a co-op. If there was a co-op issue,
Hmm.
and I'm worried about that child, and we've worked hard to like close diastemas or flare or whatever it is, crowding, then sometimes we'll just bond like a little 2 to 2. It doesn't even encompass the canines, because
Yeah.
sometimes the canines aren't in. But what I will say is it does make me nervous, unless you have like a really type A teenage girl, releasing teenagers in high school who are going into university for those years. I think even if they were really good, it makes me nervous. It's like gambling, and I don't want them to come in the back door because we're super Canadian. We're going to do it for free. We just do. That's just what we do. And so we tend to lock them into wires, but I think it's a nice option when you have them back for, we do tend to have patients back for extra checks, even if they're adults, to offer them lifetime retainers, more retainers, a value pack of retainers,
And
but to
yeah,
have the
just
option,
quick
yeah,
question.
to remove it. So like if
Sure.
I was a university student, I went off, I came back after year 4, and I'm there for a check, and I'm going to buy a value pack of 4 Viveras for 200 and what, well, usually it's like $500, but
Yeah.
whatever it is. The option before, I order those to say, hey, do you still want this lingual wire on, or you've
Right.
gotten through the danger zone? Do you want to take it off?
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. They like the emergencies for some people, popping off and repairing, it does clog up our day, all those little red emergency zones.
Hmm.
But there's also a huge percentage. I mean, Lola's had hers on since she was 9.5. My adult, now there is Kelly who super glues everything. So that could be,
Yeah,
that
Kelly
could
is
be
an
the fact.
entire package of glue.
But yeah, some of them stay on, and then those
Yeah.
kids who break it, or those adults who break it, they keep breaking it.
Yeah.
So
And would
yeah,
you just curious,
yep.
getting different insights, when you were working for your ortho, would you do a removable like a vacuum form
Oh,
over top of that bar?
always.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We used to always pre-Invisalign even. We used to always do like an upper Essex in-house. So as
Mhm.
we debonded the upper first, we bonded the wire, we took the impression, then our lab would make the Essex so that they could leave with it on the spot, by the
Yeah.
time I finished the bottom, blah, 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 blah. Now it's a little bit different because we order Viveras, or something like that, and we don't make them in-house because that's a pain in the butt, and impressions is so yesterday. But um, but yeah, so now with that we do upper and lower. So it used to
Mhm.
always be only the upper had the removable, the
Mhm.
lower was free, just the wire but free, and we only had them wear at night. And
Mhm.
yeah, we've
Yeah.
we've never done full-time retainer wear ever for any age group ever.
Sure.
Yeah,
And so this is where we're a little different. And again, not that
yeah,
there's a right or a wrong, just different kind of options for it. So I've personally found with our patients, which is ironic because they struggle so much with brushing their teeth, but they're usually trained on the mixed dentition side. This would be my observation. On the mixed dentition side, I find that when they're finished, because they've been wearing their trays at nighttime for so many years, with that strategy of what I talked about
yeah,
earlier, they're so good at wearing them already that you're just like, okay, now we're getting you this other tray. It's thicker and stronger. It's called a Vivera. It's
yeah,
Invisalign's retainers. Just keep wearing it. And
yeah,
they'll go ahead and they'll be great. And parents say, like, yeah, they're awesome because they've just always been wearing this
yeah,
since they were like 8 years old. They've worn them at nighttime. When I have teenage patients that are really good, and I tell them, look, you're going to have to wear this clear removable tray. We can either have a wire as well or not. If they're really good, then usually, again, we don't do a lingo wire. But if they're someone who we struggled with, kicking and
yeah,
screaming to get to the finish line, then like right now we have one that I think Christy's making lingo wire in office today, and kicking and screaming got to the finish line, and it's like, Christy, make that lingual wire ASAP, and let's
yeah,
get that like cemented in place right away, because this patient
yeah,
like 100% is going to relapse. There's no way. Again, just slightly different. I found in my hands I was having relapse without having patients, not mixed dentition, but adults wear their trays full time. So we would normally go ahead and have them wear, since we're not giving them lingual wire either, we would have them
right,
wear 6 months full time, which full time
yeah,
means like 18 to 20 hours a day. And
yeah,
then at that point going into nighttime. So, but you can check that out if you want to know more about our retainer protocols.
mm,
The webinar Rocking Retainers
Yeah. Yeah.
is, or not
And
webinar,
that
but
is,
podcast.
yeah,
Check that out.
that's super popular. I mean, I know even in ortho specialty, there's a huge trend uh, of doctors not using lingual retainers and putting the onus on the patients to, hey, it's up to you, protect the work we did, and if it relapses, it costs more money.
Yeah,
So,
that's we're
um,
we're more hardcore. We're
yeah,
not as nice as Kelly when she's like, as a Canadian, I'm like, we need more money for you to retreat that. Although I use discretion, right? It's like if it's a nice patient, then I'll use discretion. But if it's someone
yeah,
where it's like, look, man, you had like one thing you had, like especially if it's an
yeah,
adult patient, like you had one job here, and I told you that you have to wear them, and we've given you the spiel, and you've signed off on all the consent forms, like. Yeah. And
yeah,
you're going to have to wear them anyways. We can't hold all the expansion we did if you don't wear your retainers. So you can't
exactly.
protect from bruxism wear if you're not wearing your vacuum-formed plastic retainers or Viveras.
And I think so, like to kind of like maybe like close this off, because I think we touched on most things.
Yeah.
For doctors who are thinking, okay, I hear this and you're making it seem, easy and not as scary and whatever. But because we're talking about a long period of growth, like a long age range, and these are your patients anyways, these are your
Yeah.
GP patients. For the majority of our
Totally.
doctors, we do have orthodontists who follow us as well. But for the majority of GPs, you're still dabbling in GP or actually working hardcore in GP land. No, you're not just like Stephen doing ortho.
In Ortholand.
Um, is it profitable? Is it worth it? Is the time invested? And with all the systems that we do, like I know we do the dental monitoring, we've got it set up so we know it's profitable. But so I'm just kind of putting it
Sure.
out there. Is it profitable for the everyday person to be starting on this, or is it a lot of work? And no. Yeah.
The answer is it depends, but it should absolutely be profitable. Here's the reasons why, right? You have a long time frame where you can get things done, and so it shouldn't be like super stressful, but you also have the ability to have way more appointment than needed. And so the key here is finding out the system, whether that's going to be the Invisalign first case where you're just doing phase 1 and you get in and you get out and you get it done, or you're doing the comprehensive like 5 years and you're taking them right through the whole thing. If you have the right strategies to limit the number of times that you need to see them, but ensuring that they're doing well with their aligners, then there's really no reason that it's not profitable. When we run our case analysis, we find our mixed dentition cases are as profitable, if not even sometimes more profitable, because the other things are that you should be charging more for these Invisalign comprehensive growing patient cases. And this is the thing, patients and parents, like the parents will pay it. So
Yes.
I know a lot of doctors who do Invisalign on growing patients, and these aren't the cases that you're doing for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. Like you should be charging like a full on case price because you're treating them for a long period of time. So like our cases, we're charging like over $8,000.
Yeah. And if you're treating them to an
To
ortho
that
specialty
standard.
standard, which I hope you all are, if you're following us, or else you're not, don't say you follow us because you're not included in our club.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Kelly
Not
being
really.
mean here. There's a range. Everybody's learning and growing.
No,
But
they're learning up, but with
yes,
with
but
the
the
goal
goal
of
being,
treating to a
yeah,
high
exactly.
standard. If you're going to
Comprehensive
start these
treatment.
cases,
Yeah,
yeah, or
totally,
ask
totally.
for help. Just ask us for help.
Yes, we're here.
But
Mixed dentition, let's say, rephrase that as if you're not treating these mixed dentition, like
yes, then you
growing
can,
patients to perfect. Yeah, totally.
yes. You can, there's this place for compromise cases,
100%. Yeah,
mostly,
yeah. In
in the
non-growing
United
adults.
States.
Yeah. What did you say? I missed that.
And I'm not going to repeat. Never mind.
Okay.
You'll have to listen back to it.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. But yeah, no, I think it's profitable, and I also think
Yeah.
it's responsible as a GP and as a
it
parent. And
also, great point.
yeah,
It leads to other cases. You do one kid, then you do the second kid, then you do the third kid, then you do the first parent, then you do the second parent. It's happened to me so many times. The parents will do their kids first, and then they'll do their own cases. And so like one case, if there are multiple kids in the family, one case is never one case. One case leads, and then you treat the friends, and then you treat the friends' parents. Like it's the biggest practice differentiator and grower that you'll find.
Yeah, and brand your little retainer cases with like, your practice sticker, because those kids with their lunch pails, or they're at their sporting events, or they're just in conversation, like wow, like they tell their parents at dinner, like,
Yeah.
oh, Susanna is in aligner, she has Invisalign, or she has whatever, whatever.
Yeah.
And that becomes a topic of conversation. And they want to know, who did you
Who's
go to
who's
get that
doing
at
it?
that age?
Yeah.
And it's you. And so it's amazing that just it's feeding into your practice, and all of a sudden they're your GP patient, not just your ortho patient. So
100%. Yeah.
yeah.
And then that's just it, as well as we've even had teachers. We don't
Ah,
necessarily brand our cases, but they've seen their kids all doing Invisalign, and our area is small enough that they can kind of figure out that we're the ones.
okay.
And so they've come to us because they're like, hey, I have like 5 kids in my class who are doing Invisalign and their teeth look great. And so I
Oh,
decided like I should do it too. And it's
yeah.
like, oh, cool. Like, who knew that marketing? So yeah, put stickers on your cases to start getting some of those
Start
teachers.
educating your little tiny kids to point out teachers who have
Yeah,
like ugly teeth.
exactly.
You
Mrs.
have a
Smith,
cross pri
why are your teeth so crooked? Why
you
don't you
have a
go see
primary
Dr. Schulk?
retained canine.
Yeah. Well, Kelly,
Oh,
great as always.
okay, awesome. Nice to chat to you, and we'll
Yeah.
see what's coming next.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everybody. It's such a
Oh,
pleasure. I love doing these, and it's so fun chatting, Kelly.
awesome. Okay, take care,
Okay.
Stephen.
All right. Bye.